and also this first performance by Whitney Thornberry. And Whitney, after getting her MFA at Auburn University, she's dedicated her career to finding innovative ways of combining theater and performance with teaching history. So Colonial Williamsburg and Lost Colony and many other places. So this is her original production, one-woman show of Mary and Her Monsters. And we're looking forward to seeing it. And after that, we'll have what we more usually have, the juvenile year performance that is arranged by our former. Well, you'll hear a bit more about that later. So Whitney Thornberry, Mary and Her Monsters.
Down the curtains. The shutters still closed tight. Infernal cold snow is covering it. The shades. Rubbish red to lily just this evening. Glad that we were all home when everything's put away. And the infernal writings. Damned manuscript of stories that are forever plaguing my thoughts and dreams and nightmares. I haven't had it in such a time. I finally remember. It was so like the first, but different. What was different this time? Where is it? I saw the figure of a man, a pale student of the unhallowed arts, whose name I did not yet know. Victor, kneeling beside the thing he'd put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out, and then, on the working of some powerful engine, show signs of life and stir with an uneasy half-vital motion. The artist was terrified of his odious handiwork. He fled, hoping the process he communicated would fail. But the silence of the grave would quench forever the transient existence of the hideous corpse. He flees to his bed. But he is awakened. He opens his eyes. Oh, the horrid thing at his bedside as it did in mine, opening the curtains and looking on him with yellow, speculative eyes. It was the same and yet different. When I awakened this time, usually parts of the story keep coming to me as an observer. But this time I wasn't the observer nor the creator as it had been in months past. But the creature, the created, and as I looked into those eyes in the bed, I felt at once all of the parts and pieces that made me Mary Wollstonecraft Goblin. Each of them individually felt and yet making me whole, screaming to be known. But the eyes were not kind. The eyes, they looked on me with horror, as though So I've become a monster. I know those eyes. Those eyes that will never actually look into mine again. I don't know what this story is telling me now. Perhaps if I can write through it. After all, that's what I've done since I knew it could be done. But alone, while Shelley's asleep, I must write through it. Ever since I was little, I've been writing stories, poems, transcribing, anything to escape the chaos surrounding our house. My first memories are of the written word, of Papa taking me to see my mother's grave, to learn my own name by tracing hers. Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, author of A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, born April 27th, 1759, and died September 10th, 1797. 11 days. 11 days I had a mother in this world before she abandoned me to the next. It wasn't her fault. A brilliant woman. Beautiful, strong, sad. I've come to know her soul through her writings. I think perhaps I write more like her than I do like Papa. His is an ideal he wishes to aspire to. And hers seemed to be her soul poured forth on the page, yearning to be known, longing to break free of the constraints of society. A woman who challenged the ideas of men such as Rousseau and captured not only the eye but the heart of my equally brilliant father, almost equally brilliant father, William Godwin. A man who thinks that marriage is slavery to women. Very high ideas of his. At least that's what he writes. Theirs was a whirlwind passion. Beautiful friendship. They possessed one another in their own way, longing for one another's company just as much as they enjoyed their own separate residences. How unconventional of them, although they only maintained that until they were married. You see, my mother had an illegitimate child, Fanny, product of a torrential love affair with them married. They created a little family of their own. And then Godwin changed his views on marriage. Well, you see, the family was to grow, and one illegitimate child was bad enough, but two, society would not have it. And so they married, and still maintained a separate residence for Papa to write in. 1797 was a year of freakish weather. Thunderstorms, lightning that threatened the very earth, and it was into this that I was born. Weather such as that was not seen until just this summer, 18 and 16. And into that, I was born. For 11 days, while Mother grew ill and took a fever, and left for the next world, leaving Papa with two little girls mourning for their mother. Fanny, my constant companion. The reminder that I was not the only one mourning for a mother. Papa tried, a brilliant man that he is, passionate though he may be in his writings, he possesses a coldness, particularly when it comes to nurturing little girls. As I grew, not only was I aware of the specter of my mother hanging over me, wishing that the portrait in Papa's study was something more, but I became aware that the world was quite more aware of me than I was of it. For you see, in his grief, instead of nurturing two little girls who were grieving alongside of him, Papa decided to publish my mother's diaries, a memoir, meant to be an ode to honor the lady whom he loved so well. It was not received well. In fact, looked upon with horror to polite society for her horrid love affairs, illicit views, challenging of the status quo, attempted suicide in the depths of despair. And how could a product of a woman such as that ever be accepted into polite society? And so, my father decided that a woman's touch was needed for his little girls. Mary Jane Claremont and her two demonic children. It was a peaceful, quiet home filled with reading and quiet. And then there were five. Five of us. No two parents the same in the entire house. After my brother was born, the rest of us didn't matter. Jane Clara, Mary Jane's daughter, my other sister, my step-sister, if you will, has plagued my existence from the start. Even now, I do not think I shall ever completely be rid of her, for she sleeps not far in the next room. Fanny. She was the calm one in the household. Always. I, unfortunately, too given to my own passions, tormented my stepmother. And so my father sent me off to Scotland, where I first discovered my love of writing when no one else need read it. It wasn't writing or transcribing books for their shop, but writing of the things around me, and the stories which I imagined grew out of the craggy moors. It was on such a visit home from Scotland that I first met Percy Bysshe Shelley. I wasn't very impressed. I don't think he was either. He was recently married. He had a child on the way. But some months later, years, estranged from his hardly imaginative wife, they seemed to never get along in the first place. That is nothing. He charmed the Goblin family. Very much so. And while I dreaded returning to my parents' household, to the stepmother who she's always reminded me of one of my favorite childhood heroines. Well, she doesn't remind me of a heroine. Her mother died shortly after her birth. Her father was careless of her destiny, and she was consigned to the care of a hireling. I was there. My stepmother, the hireling. I did not want to go back to that household, but when I did, enter a knight in shining armor. Not so much shining armor as, well, an unkempt whirlwind of fascination. Bysshe is fascinated by everything, particularly the next world, or the other world, or electricity, or whatever seems to spark his fancy at the moment. And that was the spark of a new life for me. He often looks as though he is from another world, or that he's been given a shock from electricity. But he is handsome and charming, and we can talk about anything and everything. And so it wasn't many months after that second encounter that he went to my father to ask for a union of sorts. For you see, I was only 16, he 21, and still very much married. Legally, anyway. Much to our surprise, my father did not agree. You see, in keeping with his Godwinian principles, of which my Bish is a very devout disciple, you see, society should not have any say in whom loves another. And yet, in this instance, it was as though my father wielded a knife to cut my heart out of my chest and say he could see his daughter. Bish threatened to kill himself at times. At one point, he broke into the house with a gun. I suppose Jane Clare is good for something. She helped us smuggle letters back and forth, and we arranged to elope together. And because of her help, and that I was afraid she might wake the whole household if we didn't let her join us, she came along.
Oh.
I do think that might be my greatest mistake. At the time, I was so in love, so insensible to any other evil. All future calamities would be destroyed by the great love Bish and I felt for one another. And so, off we went, we three. And I soon was pregnant. Our journeys throughout France and Germany were enlightening and entertaining and wonderful. And we soon ran out of money. So we had to return to England, which wasn't the worst thing in the world given my condition. But Jane Clara refused to return to Godwin's household. You see, I do think that even though she will never admit it to me, if Bish could abandon one life for one of Godwin's daughters, why not the other? So she changed her name to Claire, one of the heroines in one of Bish's favorite novels. And she was still with us as I grew close to my time, often whisking Bish off on long walks, abandoning me. And it was so when my baby girl came 2 months early. February. It was an easy birth. She was there before the doctor even arrived. But she was so small. The doctor, the same one who attended at my birth, said she couldn't survive. My will is stronger. And so I nursed her and cared for her and fed her and loved her. And when she was 8 days old, we moved. For you see, Bish wanted a new home for his little family. And so I carried my 8-day-old baby blocks and blocks throughout London. And 3 days later, I woke up to tend to her in the middle of the night. She was gone. It was as though my soul was ripped from my body. Nothing I could do would will her to live. 11 days. 11 days she lived. I sometimes wonder if I am able to create life and not death in those I love. I survived her and my mother. Thank God Claire left us for that. For 8 glorious months, I had Wish all to myself. And then just 11 months ago, I became a mother again. Dear sweet William, he is our pride and joy. Long dark lashes, bright blue laughing eyes, a head filled with curls, and 2 dimples that appear whenever he laughs. He also likes electricity. And rocks as pets. Claire returned soon after to help, but this time, instead of setting her cap towards my fish, she decided to snag a rider of her own. The most dangerous man in England. Oh, Lord Byron. He is handsome, to be sure, and wealthy, and scandalous, and terrible, and wonderful. And so, he quickly grew tired of Claire. She is so childish, whining, always. So this summer, he escaped to Switzerland. And she found out where he was going, of course. She wanted to lead us on a merry chase, and I was feeling quite better. Fish and my William and her not chasing after my love. So if it could distract her, lead us all on a merry adventure, then why not? So off to Switzerland we went. Oh, I was refreshed by the Alps. The majestic Mont Blanc, queen of all. It soon became clear that Byron had not invited us, or at least not invited Claire. He was willing to put up with her, however, in order to form a little literary circle, if you will. Predominantly of he and Shelley. I was simply there as the, product of William Godwin and Mary Wollstonecraft. The 2 most brilliant writers of our time. According to him, he likes to blow smoke. There was another who joined our circle, John Polidori. I find him boorishly fascinating. Boorish in that all he seems to ever want to do is impress everyone with substandard prose, and fascinating because while studying to be a surgeon, he studied not only anatomy and physiology, but needed bodies, and so he did some grave robbing as well. In the evenings, Byron would often pull out books of horror stories. For you see, this summer is the year without summer. There's some volcanic activity that hasn't been there since the year of my birth. And it fills everything with the dust covering over it, as though it is always about to be evening. At the villa that Byron rented right on the lake, we could sit and watch as the lightning struck and the thunder clouds rolled across the lake. It's the perfect thing for ghost stories. Often in his villa late at night, we would stay until the wee hours of the morning, not only listening to stories, but then making up some of our own, discussing everything. Most of the time it was the men. Whenever Claire chimed in, they always ignored her. If I had something to say, sometimes they listened. But I liked to sit back and listen to what they were saying. One night, after many of these horrible, horrid, exciting stories, the topic turned to vitalism, the idea of life, what sparks life. Electricity, that it's somehow connected. There's an Italian scientist who found that he could take the corpses of frogs and poke them with scissors during electrical storms and make their limbs jump. Some years later, his nephew took it a few steps further. It's been said that with a Leyden jar, he reanimated corpses. There are rumors he has even brought people back from the dead. No one believes such things. And so one night, as we began discussing this, I tuned out. I withdrew into myself, just thinking. A waking dream, as I've often had them, where many of my stories came from as a child. Daydreams, some call them. But this was different. It was as though I was being willed down a path. And it was then that the nightmare occurred at first, and I saw that student of the unhallowed arts. And the dream has come to me many times since then. Many times since then. Each time it builds more. It was on a dreary night in November that I beheld the accomplishment of my toils. With an anxiety that almost amounted to agony, I collected the instruments of life around me, that I might infuse a spark of being into the lifeless thing. It was already 1 in the morning. The rain pattered dismally against the panes, and my candle nearly burnt out. When by the glimmer of the half-extinguished light, I saw the dull, yellow eye of the creature open. It breathed hard, and a convulsive motion agitated its limbs. The wretch, whom with such infinite pains and care I had endeavored to form, his limbs were in proportion, and I had selected his features as beautiful. Beautiful. Great God! His yellow skin scarcely covered the work of muscles and arteries beneath. His hair was of a lustrous black, flowing, his teeth of a more pearly whiteness, but these luxuriances only formed a more horrid contrast with his watery eyes that seemed almost the same color as the dim white sockets in which they were set. The more I take pen to paper, the more I am convinced that my little ghost story will never be of significance sufficient to my parentage. Shelley has offered to help me raise the literary timber of my writings. Sweet boy. But I must admit, I'm afraid. You see, his hand quite often, thus far anyway, only seems to edit Victor. Victor Frankenstein. He does not touch the creation. I must confess I'm quite all right with that. For you see, he is my own. I feel an affinity towards him. But is it that he is not interesting enough for Shelley to want to edit? Or is he already interesting? If his hand edits too heavily, I fear that I shall disappear. And the world will see only Shelley. among them. You see, in my writings, I pour forth my soul upon the page. And if he edits that away, what might remain of me? He does not see it. He writes his ideals, he and Papa both. They have these high-minded thoughts of what should and shouldn't be. How you should and shouldn't act. To me, quite often it sounds like they are just as the same society in which they seek to condemn. In pouring forth my soul upon the page, is it a crime? For it is not only my own experiences, it is the things which occur to those I love, those around me. Are we not, as writers, as poets, as authors, responsible for the consequences of the things that we write? For you cannot only take the end product, but also the manner in which you get there. Much as like my mother observed during the French Revolution. While the end may be something someone wishes to strive for, the means of getting there, grievous. And so I wonder if taking those things which have made me who I am might not be turning me into the thing I seek to condemn. You see, some weeks ago we received a missive. Fanny, my dear half-sister, who must have felt abandoned by all of us, took a train from London, and in a hotel, all alone, as she felt for such a long time, took laudanum and ended the existence of the dearest, sweetest creature to ever walk the earth. But I must write her into my story somehow. She wrote letters to all of us, but they arrived too late. Vish got there, but by the time he got there, the only letter that remained was hers. But I have long determined that the best thing I could do was to put an end to the existence of a being whose birth was unfortunate, and whose life has only been a series of pain to those persons who hurt their health in endeavoring to promote her welfare. Perhaps to hear of my death will give you pain, but you will soon have the blessing of forgetting that such a creature ever existed. Fanny, can you ever forgive me to abandoning you to the cold household of strangers, where Godwin could only write to us, "Go not, disturb not the silent dead. Do nothing to destroy the obscurity she so much desired that now rests upon her head." Damn him! From the start of my childhood, if none of his other teachings took, it was that lies and denying the truth is the most grievous sin of all, and now he would deny the daughter with no parents. And now, just days ago, we received another letter. You see, my rival is dead. Not that she's been my rival for some time, but Harriet and her unborn child of her unnamed lover are claimed by the icy depths in her own despair. They found her body, but I think her soul was gone long ago, and that it is my fault. And now he writes to say that I might marry and become respectable once again. That the father who has cut me off as though an unwanted limb for the last 2 years, he didn't even respond when Bish wrote to tell him he had a grandson with his own name. He hasn't spoken to me in 2 years, and yet now wishes to welcome me, to stitch me back into his life. It is the thing that I have longed for since I was a little girl. I stand on the precipice of a bittersweet joy. To claim the one thing my soul desires. To be my Bish's one and only, in name as well. To once again be no others but my papa's. But I'm not. I'm not his. I am me. Regardless of parentage, love, abandonment, marriage, motherhood, I am. I think perhaps I should claim those names which I am most proud of. I think perhaps I shall enjoy becoming Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. Let Godwin be Godwin. But let Mary be Mary. Let my demons come and flow from my pen, and let me write in my own heart's blood. Let my hideous progeny go forth and prosper. Let me pull forth from the grave those lives abandoned and lost, so that mine might be made whole. After all, I live.